Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the F4L Headquarters Podcast. Thank you. Oh, thank you. You guys are too much. Oh, come on. You guys. Yeah, I'm telling you guys really know how to make a guy feel welcome here to the F4L Headquarters Podcast. If only everyone walked into the F4L Headquarters Podcast was greeted by such a great interaction and so forth. And I'll tell you, from my wrestling days, it's one of the things that I mostly miss is arriving to an arena, walking out to a ring, and hearing their live crowd reaction. Unless you've actually gone out there in front of a mass of people, whether it be sports or performance, you probably wouldn't be able to understand what that feeling is like. But, as many people have said, from different sources and different ways to walk to a ring or a mat or an arena or a stage, it gets addictive after a while. We'll go over that later, however. So, many people in the world, Jay Leno, he had Kevin Eubanks. Conan O'Brien, he had Andy Richter. Johnny Carson had Ed McMahon. Me? I have a band of ants. So, ants, take us away to our first segment. All right, thanks, guys. I'm telling you, when you guys can I don't know many people who have such a reliable group of ants that can play their, intro music to separate different segments and so forth. But luckily, I am very fortunate enough to have the best and most talented ant band out there. So before we go further, let's give a hand to our ant band. They're always doing such a great job. Yeah, absolutely. They're always doing a great job. Thank you. I'm telling you, we have to control our ants because sometimes they get a little bit overzealous and they like to rock out, and for some reason they really enjoy playing Freebird for some reason. But we have to keep them, focused and so forth, which is why we luckily are able to kind of keep them organized by individual segments. Otherwise, they just kind of rock out and we don't know what they'd play outside of what we ask them to. So thank our ant band. We'll name them later, but that's some pretty good stuff. We're going to first want to start with shout-outs and thank yous, first of all. Let me thank, first of all, everyone on social media all over the place for some very kind messages, congratulating my wife and my family and I on 5 years of happily 5 years of anniversaries. that was all over the place, that sentence. But a happy 5-year anniversary, as we officially celebrated it this past yesterday. And for those people out there, did we do anything fancy and exciting? We had a day that was for us. It was a family day. I wasn't on social media a great deal yesterday. I, of course, responded to messages like always and whatnot, but for the most part, I devoted it to spending time with my wife and my kids, as it's 5 years is a long time to be, well, to be clear and be fit and to be honest, it's been a lot longer than 5 years. It's just 5 years officially married. The only wedding to take place inside of an actual pro wrestling ring and not have antics accompanying it, other than the DJ maybe forgetting to turn off the music when we're about to do our vows. Other than that, there were no one went through any tables, and there was no food fights at our wedding. It was kind of very peaceful and majestic, as you wanted. So thank you to everyone for your kind messages and congratulations on our wedding. We're very happy, and here's to 500 more days of being married, 500 more anniversaries to go. So, let's see. Where to go next? Ants, why don't you take us to our next segment, as I already thanked everyone here. So, bring us to our first segment. All right, everyone. I guess first and foremost, one of the things that, we kind of move around in different places is our segments on shoutouts. I thought what we would do is we would shout people out in different segments today and take kind of individual segments as themselves. So this first one I wanted to address actually goes into our first topic that we're going to chat about today. We want to recognize a young man out of Australia who has been doing a lot to help out the environment and really teaching people about the importance of conservation and saving the environment. Where he is from, he's from Australia. They have some of the best beaches and waterways in the world, and unfortunately, with pollution and recklessness of humans, it's kind of fallen apart. So we want to recognize Elijah Richardson. Maybe you've heard of him, maybe you haven't. If you haven't yet, give it time. I'm sure it's only a matter of time to meet this amazing young man who is all about raising awareness for the environment and trying to make the world a better place in his own right. A lot of the times on this show, if you haven't heard me talk about animals on this planet and how I'm always constantly trying to, give you guys answers and trying to put animals that a lot of people don't like into a better light. And today I was doing research, and I have to be honest, I was doing research on things that I didn't know about. And I, for those people who don't know, in my younger days, one of my favorite subjects in school and in whatnot was science, and animal science specifically. The study of animals is zoology, for those people who don't know. But I took a fascination to all animals. I really enjoyed learning about the various different animals and the very important roles that each play. And I think one of the first things I realized is a lot of animals get a bad rap without a lot of people actually knowing the facts behind those myths. And a lot of the times that's what it comes down to. Where Elijah Richardson, he talks a lot about, conservation and, pollution and people ruining these beautiful waterways. But that affects the marine life. And oftentimes people, speaking of marine life, there's certain animals that I've talked about plenty on this show that get a bad rap that are not as bad as people make them out to be, like sharks. I myself have been shark diving since I was 17. I've been shark diving a few times. Well, okay, I was 18 actually, the first time I went shark diving. I've been scuba certified since I was a lot younger. I was scuba certified, a long time ago. But I've been shark diving several times. I get myself mixed up with my friend Adam, who was 17 when we got scuba certified together. In order to go shark diving and so forth, you have to be able to have the proper guidance and so forth. In order to go deep sea diving, you need to know how to properly use tanks and so forth. I've been licensed for years to do so, which is a very cool thing. I've been shark diving several times since. I get all my dates mixed up sometimes when those things took place. But one thing that I never forget is the magical moments when you hit the water and then being around and being absorbed by the animals within and under the ocean. One of the things that I find amazing is how humans are quick to, point the blame at sharks and say how evil sharks are and how monstrous they are for all of that, eating us humans and so forth. And I know that you guys have heard time and time and time again from actual people who study sharks and people who study the ocean that sharks are not interested in people. as much as whatever, Steven Spielberg or whatever these Hollywood types want to tell you. Jaws is a fictitious story. It's not a real movie. The shark that they used to film Jaws was actually more horrific than actual sharks to be made, to be all fairness. The real horror comes from trying to put that movie together and get this big, giant, mechanical shark to work. That's really where the horror comes from, if we're being honest. You guys have heard my top movies that are overrated, and Jaws is on that list because of the pure ignorance that it actually ensues. I think the problem with these Hollywood movies that glorify shark attacks and make sharks to be these bad, monstrous animals, they're really what's to blame here. The news and the media does the same thing. A lot of people, won't watch the evening news, but if you add, shark attack on the beach today, of course, everyone now has their, eyes, ears perked up, and now everyone wants to hear what happened with the shark attack. And 9 out of 10 times, it's some person who was surfing or doing something that would resemble something like a seal. And it would usually be like the shark came and took a bite. And those people don't know, sharks do what they call test biting, where they want to find out what the heck you are because they can't see well. They have fantastic smell, and they could find you via, vibration. But as far as seeing wise, they're not the greatest of seeing. And on top of that, they're also not the greatest and the smartest either, because why? They're fish, ladies and gentlemen. They're fish. And people in Hollywood make these things out to be like whale smart. Now, to be fair, whales can be a little bit more intelligent, and the reason being, whales are mammals. Whales have a lot more in common than humans than sharks. Sharks have the same mentality and have the same appeal or the same kind of drive as a goldfish. Are you going to be afraid of a goldfish if it comes at you? Now, granted, you might say, well, a shark has got big, giant teeth, and, it hurt when they bite. Yeah, but so will the neighbor's dog, and so will the car that hits you across the street. So will, a branch that will fall on you from walking under it. There's no difference in the danger of leather, no difference in that kind of a concept. Because you have the exact same chance of being bit by a shark that you do getting struck by lightning. I remember last week when 5 people got hit by lightning last week? Probably not, because no one talked about that. But if you put a shark in the news, well, then it's all over the place. In movies recently like Cocaine Bear, completely ridiculous in concept. Now, granted, loosely, all of these movies that have to do with animals are always says underneath it, loosely based on real stories or true stories. I think that goes for a lot of these things. But, Cocaine Bear, if you want to look at that, the realistic story, sorry to break the news to you guys, I'm not going to talk about the movie because it's a movie. But I can talk about the real thing. And the real story is, this drug dealer was, out there, was up flying above the woody area, and he threw a bunch of cocaine out the plane. The plane crashed. He ended up dying because his parachute didn't open because he was on drugs himself. And a giant bear was found near the cocaine and was dead. That was the cocaine bear that everyone glorifies to be this monstrosity animal that went around on a killing spree, according to the movie. And I'm not faulting the filmmakers for trying to make a horror film out of something so ridiculous as a concept, because the concept is ridiculous. The concept of a bear that is under the influence of a narcotic is enticing for a film audience. They like that horror stuff, and bears can be scary for those people who don't know anything about bears or animals or nature. But the reality of it is, if people really followed the real story there, the bear, got in. Yes, the bear got into this cocaine that it found that fell out of the plane, but it was dead not long after that because the amount of cocaine the bear ate was not like what other people did. Let's not forget, cocaine is not meant to be eaten, and that's what the bear did. It ate the cocaine. Bears are not going to go out there, and they weren't necessarily, this took place back in the day, but they're not educated enough to know how to snort cocaine or how to do drugs. It's an animal, and the animals know instincts, and the instincts is, well, there's something here, let's see what it tastes like, and whether it liked it or not, he ate enough of it to kill him, and that's ultimately what happened to the actual cocaine bear. There was no incidences of the bear actually going out there and doing anything horrific. It was displayed by the movie. Now, in Jaws and 700,000 other shark-related movies, sharks are often villainized as these man-eaters who go out there looking for animals. Now, when I was doing research for this, and admittedly this usually happens, and a lot of people might be shocked to know I actually like animals as much as I like people, but I do like animals. Sometimes animals are nicer than humans, if I'm being honest. Sometimes animals are better. Sometimes animals are more relaxing and calmer to deal with than animals. That's why they have emotional support animals. They don't have emotionally support people. And some people would rather pet a dog than actually talk to someone about their feelings. You know what? I get that. Same thing goes for a cat and whatnot. People have emotional support animals, all kinds of varieties and whatever else. I don't think it stops at a dog or a cat. My issue with that whole thing is how many people use that as an excuse to get out of taking responsibility for their animals, or to take advantage of a system to get their animals into places they shouldn't be in just because. I've had a relative, I had a sister who claimed to have a service dog, but to be a service dog, you actually have to, the dog has to have proper training to do so. It has to be, basically the dog has to be able to take care of itself and you. And if it's a service animal and you have to do more work to take care of the animal than yourself, then it's not a support animal, and there's no documentation for such. And I think the problem when people have these supposedly support animals, they use this as a ruse to get away with something that, they don't want to. Maybe they want to have the shock value of bringing their pet snake into a place, or maybe they want to bring their dog into a place that normally doesn't allow dogs. See, let's face it, most places animals aren't allowed to just go into due to Board of Health reasons, contamination, things might get spread, different other things like that. But people don't really look at those things. They look at, well, I don't want to put my dog outside, I don't want to leave it at home, so I'm going to bring my animal into this establishment and say that it's a support animal or whatever, which actually takes away the credit of actual animals who that for, and the people who actually need those things and need those services. Those people are often overlooked because of the people who take advantage of that system, which I'm also against. These are the same kinds of people who would also park in a handicapped spot for people who are not handicapped. It should be looked at the same way. And if you're doing that, then you're basically doing the same thing as someone who parks in a handicapped spot. Most people who have reasonable compassion would look at that and be kind of appalled by that. But for some reason, we give something a title like, oh, it's a support animal or whatever else. If it's not documented, it's not a support animal. But when you do that, that kind of diminishes the real-life support animals that people actually have. And some animals, are meant to be to be domesticated. If you want pets, that's one thing. To have, a support animal is another thing. It's not the same. I hope people know that's a different. See, having a pet can be therapeutic. I get that. And it is. It is therapeutic. It teaches a lot of responsibility and a lot of, how to care for an animal and so forth like that, and how to take responsibility and whatnot. It teaches also about the life and the death process too. And if you're gonna be getting someone, a young person, some type of animal, you better be ready to go into the details of, the life cycles of these animals. A lot of the times people don't, and then they have to deal with those things. Or sometimes they intentionally do this so their kids can understand the mortality thing. So people need to know that, when an animal passes on, it passes on, and, then you got to deal with it your own way. People look at those things in different ways. I'm not going to sit here and tell you how you explain that to your kids. If you use religion, then probably stick with that. If you're not, then stick with something else. But in all honesty, there's no right or wrong answer for that, because it's going to happen with any animal. It happens with every animal. I want to point that out. Every animal, including us. So the story is going to go once your young person realizes that its animal died. The next question is, well, will we die? And that'll open the Pandora's box in the communication for mortality. Like, how long do we live for? We're not going to get into that on this show, however. That's not something we're going to get into right now. But we're talking about animals and how oftentimes people look at them as these villainized things due to how they're portrayed. Now, we're in October. So, and of course, this is the month for all of the supposed creepiest animals ever. Spiders are up there. Bats are up there. Rodents are up there. Now, I got to be honest with you. I'm not overly fond of rodents myself. I'm not fond of them at all, because I know there is a lot of studies that have shown that a lot of ants throughout history, not ants, but rodents in the history have caused, numerous issues in lifetime. They caused the Black Plague, for example. There's been several other documented things that rodents have started. Now, what is a natural predator to the rodents? Well, that's the snake. Snakes are often seen as these villainous things as well. Snakes have as much intelligence as the shark does, if we're being honest. But here's what I can tell you. I am someone who grew up with a snake. I've had a snake since I was 5 years old. I had a snake. I got my first snake. Her name was Damien. And yes, I named her Damien because I didn't realize at that age, at 5, that there was a such thing as boy and girl snakes. Probably should have, but I didn't. It wasn't until I got older and I found out that Damien was in fact a female snake. And of course I named Damien after one of my favorite wrestlers. His snake was named Damien. And of course I was doing martial arts at the time, so I was rewarded with getting a snake that I had to learn the responsibilities for and so forth. And I'll tell you, out of all of the animals you can have, I know a lot of people are like screaming right now, what are you talking about? Snakes are creepy and gross and slimy and blah, blah, blah. Listen, I've heard this my entire life. I was raised around a snake. I got my first snake, like I said, when I was 5. And as long as you do your education, as long as you do certain things, there is no issues with a snake. First of all, the very first misconception is that snakes are slimy. If you've ever actually touched a snake, you know a snake is not slimy at all. Snake's skin is the same consistency as like a fingernail. So it has that glossy look to it, but it is not slimy, to say the least. If you have a snake that has slime growing on it, that means it's sick. Fun fact. Some quick animal veterinarian stuff there. So if you have a snake that is sick, and it gets, the only reason it would have any slime on it is if there's a certain disease that snakes can get, which is the same disease, by the way, that fish can get, where it grows on its scales. Snakes have a similar thing that grows on its skin, which gives it like a slimy feel to it. And if that happens, you need to get it to a doctor who specializes in reptile medicine. But before you start getting all squeamish about snakes, let me tell you some of the perks and one of the things that I have learned having a snake since a very young age. First and foremost, snakes are natural repellent for any rodents, or actually any animal. growing up, we never had mice, rats, or anything that ever came into our house. I often wondered why they'd be at my relatives' houses. We'd never see mice in our own house as long as the snake was there. And the snake was always around. And one of the things I come to find out is that the snake skin itself is so potent to other animals that animals know when there's a snake nearby. And for some reason, it repels them from coming anywhere near where there's a snake. And that's not just, I'm not talking just mice and rats. I'm talking mice, rats, possums, raccoons, squirrels. If you scatter, snakes shed their skin every so often once they grow. If you take those skin sheddings, that, again, the snake's going to shed its skin and have new skin every time it eats when it grows. When you take those skin sheddings and you scatter it around your yard, for example, it keeps everything away. So if you're someone who has an issue with, say, raccoons going through, or pests or vermins going in your trash, if you have a snake and you scatter some snake skin around that area, you're not going to see any animal come into your yard ever again. So make sure you're aware of that. Not just your vermins, but pretty much any animal. If they know that snake skin's there, they're going to be alerted to it. And there's not a lot of animals that like to go in there. I've seen dogs and cats not go into yards that have a snake, unless they're someone who has grown up around. There's an animal that has been introduced to the snake or whatnot. And yes, snakes can coexist with other animals. And of course, there are the animals who don't want anything to do with a snake. But there's several animals that, work well. Some other things for people who are snake enthusiasts. There's a few things you should probably be aware and maybe help you guys out for those people who've never had a snake. One, you have to understand that snakes are going to eat. That's the first thing. Snakes are going to eat. They do enjoy eating. And they're going to always be that case. Snakes, for the most part, I've had multiple different types of. I've had two types of snakes. I've had a Colombian red-tailed boa. That was Damien. She was 8 feet long and 90 pounds by the time she died. When I had her, I remember I got her when I was 5. Unfortunately, she died when I was about 21 years old. I want you to do the math on that now. I got her when I was 5 years old. She died when I was 21 years old. It's a long time for an animal to live. And unfortunately, I don't really know how she died, to be honest, because at that time, she was with a friend of mine who was watching her, unfortunately. At 8 feet long and 90 pounds, she was my biggest snake that I have ever had. And also, female snakes tend to grow bigger than that of the male snakes in the species, for the most part. So if you see these big, massive, giant snakes, for the most part, they're probably going to be a female, so you know. And also, their colors may or may not be less intense. So that needs to be said. So I've had a Colombian red-tailed boa, that was Damien, and then I've also had a ball python, and his name was Cole. And here's a fun thing about snakes. A lot of people will say, people here who have snake phobia are probably not happy about that, or probably not. People who are afraid of snakes or don't like snakes are probably screaming right now. But I'm going to tell you the facts about snakes because I grew up with one. It's a couple of them. And I'm going to tell you some stories about these snakes that, maybe change your mind a little bit, perhaps. Maybe not. So anyone who's afraid of snakes, you might want to, maybe check back in a few, because I'm going to just talk briefly about my snakes and tell you what made them awesome. Damien, first and foremost, was, again, my bigger snake. And one of the first things I learned is you can train a snake. That's the first misconception about reptiles. or snakes is that you cannot train it. There's no training a reptile, supposedly, because they don't have the brain to do so. I don't know who told people that, because I was able to train Damien. Now, you ask, how do you train a snake? Well, how do you train a dog? How do you train a cat? With rewards, right? For the most part. Well, here's the thing. Snakes, there's a lot of pros and cons with having snakes. I mentioned one of the pros is it keeps all the rodents away. The cons is when you have to feed it, that isn't for the faint of heart. For those people who like animals, who like rodents, and kind of those kinds of, people who are actually like those kinds of animals tend to not enjoy snakes, because that will enforce your fear. And I'll be the first to admit that. So that's the con of a snake is, when it comes time to eat, they're going to be completely different. But here's the thing. When it comes to the feeding process of a snake, there's things you can do to prevent yourself from being bit or struck, as they call it, because these types of snakes, ball pythons and red-tailed boas, they don't actually bite. They have no venom. They're constrictors. That means they tend to use their force to crush and suffocate their opponents. Then they're prey and then eat it. Some animal 101, folks. I'm going to spare you all the details, but what I can tell you is that if you can get past that piece, if you're someone who can't watch that, there are things you can do. If you're not someone who wants to watch that, I did watch just because I wanted to make sure, one, that whatever it was that I was feeding her, it didn't attack or hurt the snake, and if it did, I knew how to take care of her afterwards. But here's a few, easy household, I would call them housekeeping rules, I guess, for keeping a snake or domesticating a pet snake. First and foremost, you need 2 tanks. What do you mean 2 tanks, you're saying? What do you mean 2 tanks? They live in 1 tank. All right, unless it's a big snake, and then you have to make other alterations. So Damien was 8 feet long, 90 pounds. When I first got her, she was a tiny little bit of a worm. Really, she was no bigger than maybe about 1 inch. Not very big at all, folks. She was tiny of a snake. But she grew, obviously, to be 8 feet long and 90 pounds. How did she get that big? Because I fed her. But I fed her the proper way. The way to feed a snake is twice a month. You heard that, folks? Twice a month. That's all you had to feed your snake. Twice a month. And you give it water once a week. These are also pros and cons of snakes. It's one of the easiest animals to take care of. It doesn't make noise. That's a pro and a con. It's a pro because you don't have to worry about your neighbors banging on your walls because your animal's making lots of noise. The con is that because it doesn't make a lot of noise, you have to be wary of it to make sure it's okay. If it's having a hard time or it needs something, you're not going to know that unless you're observant of your animal. These snakes, unfortunately, are not... these snakes are not snakes that... snakes are in general are... like I said, they eat twice a month is what I'm going to tell you. A snake doesn't need to eat a lot to grow. They do need to eat, and usually I find it's best to feed them live animals. I know a lot of people are screaming right now. I don't know a lot of people who are not into that thing, believe in the whole frozen food thing. I have found that to be ineffective with some snakes. I've had I've had 3 snakes altogether, but I have 2 snakes that had the most personality. The first snake I said was Damien. Damien was the biggest snake, and I've had her the longest. And what made her different, once you get past the food part, first of all, what they ate was different because of her size, right? Because of her size, the way to properly feed to train a snake, when it comes time to eating, you have to take her out of her home tank and you put her in another tank that is made specifically for just her to eat in, or him or her. That's no matter what snake it is. So I'll say that again. So if you have a snake and you're trying to feed the snake, well, when you have a snake in general, you have two tanks. One is for it to live in. The other one is for it to eat in. If you do this enough and with repetition, the snake is not going... First of all, if you take the snake out in between the meal times, and again, because it only eats twice a month, once in the beginning of the month, once in the end, and you will know when they are hungry. Now, Damien, because she was bigger, she required bigger food, we'll say. And what I did is I call it chocolate. Their food is chocolate for both of them. And again, I was younger, folks. Hold on. As I sneeze. Excuse me, folks. Sorry, Vince McMahon. I didn't mean to scare you. Anyway. Anybody who knows, knows. But anyway. Let's sneeze again. Okay, Vince McMahon's really not happy now. Okay, cool. Now that we got that over with. So when it comes time to feeding the snake, I called it chocolate. The first time you feed the snake, you feed it what it normally would eat. Whether it be a mouse, rat, whatever. That's its normal diet, right? If it's a bigger snake, then it's a rat. If it's a smaller snake, then it's a mouse. Clean it. It's kind of easy, right? Well, technically, if it's a smaller snake, it's two mice. And if it's a bigger snake, then it's one rat, generally speaking. But anywho, one mouse, depending on the size of your snake. And it will eat both things. And then it's done for the month. Now, because it only eats twice a month, once in the beginning of the month, once in the end of the month, it's easy. You should be easy for you to remember to feed your snake. Again, if you're someone who can't do that, if you're someone who can't keep up with that part of it, probably not good for you to have any that or any other animal because you can't commit like that. And that's okay. And maybe that's not the animal for you, but if you are someone who's interested in these things, I'm going to give you the tips on how to do this so you don't hurt the snake or yourself, and to have a healthy life and respect your snakes. The other thing you got to remember is not all your friends are going to love your pet as much as you will. Damien was... Both snakes were not as bad. No, were not bad snakes. Both snakes were really good, and the reason they're good is because I trained it. And again, I used the chocolate method. So at the beginning of the month, you feed it whatever it normally would eat. At the end of the month is when you would feed it what I called the chocolate, the dessert. And that would be, and again, if they didn't strike me, which means they didn't bite me or go after me, usually they didn't. If they didn't try to escape from the tank, and that's pretty much all it is, right? I mean, what else would a snake, get into that it would give you a hard time for? If it doesn't try to escape and it doesn't bite you or anybody else, then you give it its chocolate, like any other thing you try to train. Like if you're trying to train a dog, roll over, play dead, you give it a treat. Well, same thing with a snake. Only because you only feed it twice a month, once in the beginning, once in the end, it's a happier deal. Giving it water in between, and then what you do is you take the animal out in between the feeding times. Now, the reason you have the feeding tank is because, there's two reasons why you take the snake out whenever you can. One is for socialization, to keep the snake happy around other people, and also so the snake isn't freaking out around people, which usually it doesn't, and also so people can feel comfortable knowing that the snake is not as bad as everyone makes it out to be. But also it shows the animal that you're not going to hurt them, and it feels secure, that kind of thing. It also knows it's not time to eat if it's with you. I do encourage you, wash your hands before and after handling your snake. Kind of self-explanatory. Don't go grabbing your snake or touching your snake if you've touched anything else, especially anything that has to do with its food or anything that might have any kind of odors on it. Snakes have a fantastic smell. It's that tongue that they stick out that tastes everything. That tongue, when a snake sticks its tongue out, a lot of people think, well, it's, sticking the tongue out at it, it's angry or whatever else, or being rude. When a snake sticks its tongue out, it's tasting everything in the air. That tongue tells that snake everything it needs to know. And if that tongue, believe it or not, will tell the snake what you are, what your blood type is, if you have some type of disease, how you're feeling, what your heart rate is. It is incredible what that tongue tells the snake. And there is a lot of information that tongue tells the snake. Now, if you are washing your hands before you touch the snake, there's no odor on your hands, that means the snake, snake says, oh, that's just my owner. Right? You have your clean hands. You don't have any kind of, filth or anything that might resemble its prey on your hands. Then it's not going to want to bite you or strike you because the snake's eyesight is not very good to begin with. And as much as I say you can train it, it's not this. It knows there's a few different things they know how to do. And, eating is one of the things they know how to do. Trying to figure out necessarily what they're striking at is a completely different thing. So there's that. But the other thing is they also know what not to eat, and they know what is not a good time. That's something else to remember about snakes. If you ever get a rodent of some kind or something that the snake just doesn't eat, be aware of that. And that's one of the reasons why I suggest I watched when my snakes ate, because I want to make sure, one, everything's gone. And two, just to make sure that, everything's good on that end. If a snake doesn't eat the food, we all know what the food is. We're not going to play foolish. If it doesn't eat it, there's a reason for it. Maybe the animal might have a disease or a sickness or who knows what. But then that's when you have to figure out what else you're going to do with its food. And then you got to find it something else to eat instead. Go probably back to wherever you get your food from, and then take care of that way. So that's kind of the proper way to train the snake. So as long as you're giving it whatever it normally eats in the beginning of the month, the end of the month, he's hungry again, you feed him again, and you give him something. If he doesn't bite or strike or try to get out of the cage in between that time, then you give him whatever the chocolate is, him or her the chocolate that it deserves, something better than. And again, you have to use proportional size for that. You've got to take into account the animal's size and the snake's size. Snakes, let me tell you, they'll eat it, they'll try it. But you don't want the snake to hurt itself, which is sad to watch and hurtful to watch. Luckily, I pretty much had a good grasp, and my snakes had a good idea what they could and couldn't eat, which made me happy. Because I'll tell you, I'm not overly fond of their prey, so there's that. But the other thing about it is, you might be saying, well, if it only eats twice a month and drinks water once a week, how often do you have to clean the tank? And what kind of smells do they have? I've heard the conception that snakes smell, and I don't know where that comes from. My experience with snakes is they don't generally have a smell as long as you keep the tank clean. Their droppings sometimes can, but the droppings is like literally a pellet, kind of like an owl pellet. That's actually kind of what the snake's poop looks like, not to be graphic, but it kind of looks like an owl pellet, and that's actually kind of the same consistency of what snake poop is like an owl pellet. And that's kind of what's in there, too, to be honest with you. And which means that it's probably the easiest thing to clean up, so there really shouldn't be any excuse why you should have a dirty tank. Especially, proper thing is if it's only eating solids twice a month, you know that it's only going to go to the bathroom how many times, folks? Twice a month. That means you should probably clean your tank at least twice a month, maybe? Or at least, I would say twice a month. Because remember, you don't feed the tank in the same tank it lives in. Remember that. That's very important. And most likely, when you feed your snake in the feeding tank, and again, once it's done eating, give it some time to digest, and then you can put him back to his regular environment, let him digest everything. And the reason you'll know when it's all digested, when you see it come out, plain and simple. You'll see it out. You'll see you'll see it. It's not hard to miss. And just be wary of that. That's all. Small potatoes. Not literally, but you get it. And again, so clean the tank twice a month, probably to make sure his tank's healthy, because he's eating in the feeding tank, but he's going to probably go to the bathroom in his regular tank, sadly to say. And yes, in case you're wondering, well, what about if you're holding him? When does he go there? Well, you should probably let him digest before you take him out anyway. I always let him sit. I always used to let my snakes, digest fully after they've gone to the, through the whole process. After a couple days, or maybe a day or two, if I figure it's already digested and I see that it's already passed, then I'll bring him out and, do whatever. Now, I'm going to talk about the personalities of these snakes. I know we're sitting here talking about snakes and people who are afraid of snakes right now. I can't believe he's talking about these things right now. Which is interesting, because one of the things I'm going to talk about is a person that has a nickname of a snake. Which, anyway, we'll get into that. But in general, like I said, Damien had a personality, and Cole had his own personality. And it's a different type of snake. Traditionally speaking, red-tailed boas tend to be a little bit more hostile, I guess you'd say. Again, if you're smart and you know what you're doing, and you're not, doing something like, eating Kentucky Fried Chicken and then grabbing your snake afterwards. By the way, that would probably result in, who knows, I don't suggest doing that, because that's probably a good way for the snake to get distracted, because if you think about it, if you've ever touched any kind of chicken or anything with your hands, any kind of meat, and you got those things in your hands, the snake picks that up. It doesn't know what you are anymore. The smell of the chicken grease is now on your fingers, and that's why the snake may or may not strike. If you don't have a snake, if you have a snake that is not, nice enough to know what not to strike at. But in general, there's a good chance he's going to strike you if you have greasy hands, or just got done eating KFC and now you got to go grab your snake while washing your hands first, which, by the way, is gross. I mean, I don't know who doesn't think that that's gross, but in general, that's kind of why you would wash your hands, because you don't want to give your snake any idea that you might be a chicken, because, all honesty, to him or her, he's smelling the grease from the chicken, and he's going to strike wherever that is. So you're giving yourself a hard time for that. Now, I've never been struck by any of my snakes, and also, knock on wood, I've also never had a snake get out, except for the last snake that I had, who was my youngest and didn't last long. That snake, unfortunately, but anyway, we're going to talk about these two snakes in general. Damien, because I've had her for I had her for so long, and she was my bigger one, and she was a huge snake. But she was more, her personality was, she did like cuddling, but the thing that made Damien, her thing was, she would put her head in your armpit and then just kind of just sit there, resembling falling asleep. She probably very much did fall asleep. Remember, snakes are cold-blooded animals, and the reason why you need a heated rock in your tank, or a heating stone, or a heater, is because it doesn't have the ability, like humans do, to have warm blood. Snakes can't, get themselves warmer or cooler like humans can. They don't have the ability to throw on a jacket. They have cold blood, so they're going to need that warmth to keep them warm. They want to be warm. Their blood is cold. That means they don't have that ability to keep themselves warm, which is why you need a heating rock or a heating lamp or some type of device. I used a heating rock. I felt that worked the best. And Damien in cold used a heating rock for the most part. and they enjoy that. Usually you'll see them hanging out on their heat and rock, whatever they need it. But because they're warm, she would stick her head in your armpit and probably relax and fall asleep. And that was the extent of Damien. And she could pretty much eat anything. In her size, that was Damien. Now, Cole was a different story. Cole was a ball python, so already we're talking about a different breed. Ball pythons in general tend to be more docile than any other domesticated snake, and they're the most popular domesticated snake as well. Ball pythons are usually brownish yellow. They're like, whenever you think of a pet snake in general, it's usually probably a ball python you're thinking of. Generally speaking, ball pythons tend to be more docile, and the males more so than the females will be more docile. But I've never had a problem with any snake. Now, Cole, fun story about Cole. The reason I got Cole, guess when I got her? I got Cole right after Damien died, if we're being honest. Damien passed away when I was 21, and I had just moved into my first, I was just getting things situated in my first apartment. And a friend of mine said, hey, I'm moving and I can't take my snake with me. I know you just lost your snake. Would you be willing to take mine? And of course, I'm not going to pass up a snake, especially after I lost poor Damien. You know, you do get attached to your animals, folks. It's just like any other animal you get attached to. So I got Cole. What was his name? Why was he Cole? Because it was underneath my 6th Sense poster, which at that point was my favorite film. So had to remember Cole. And again, at that time, a snake actually fit my lifestyle. Whenever you think of an animal, you should really think about what kind of a lifestyle you lead. Because if you're someone who is never home and you don't have the time, the commitment to sit there and there's difference in taking care of a snake versus a dog or a cat. A dog or a cat, for example, right away, when I tell you have to feed a snake twice a month, and a dog and a cat you got to feed on a daily basis, and you do, sometimes twice, depending on the size of whatever it is. But, in order to keep the snake correctly, it's twice a month. So it doesn't eat a lot, so which means you don't have to feed it, you don't have to spend as much on food. Really, it's kind of touch and go if you want. And then the other part about it is just the fact that it doesn't make any noise. It doesn't smell as people says it does. It doesn't. There's no odor to a snake. And I heard someone say that not long ago that there was an odor. I'm like, that's if you don't clean the tank. If you don't clean the tank after a while, there can be a little bit of an odor. But it's an owl. It's like one consistency of an owl pellet. Why can't you clean that? And it takes not long. In case you're wondering, well, okay, so if you're going to clean the tank, where do you put the snake while you're cleaning the tank? Where do you put the snake? If you're cleaning the snake, that's simple. You hold the snake, because I don't know why that's such a difficult thing, but anyway, you're cleaning the snake tank. It's not like you're feeding it, because here's the thing: when you take the snake out and you don't put it into the tank, it knows it's not going to eat. But if you take the snake to the tank where it eats, it's going to expect to eat, which again is where you could get possibly struck if you're not paying attention or whatever. The reason being is thinks, well, I'm going to eat, obviously, that's why I'm in this tank. In all honesty, there's no reason why, you can't just clean the tank while holding the snake. I don't see why you wouldn't want to hold the snake. That's why you get a snake, so you can interact with the thing. It's not a goldfish. Despite how many people I know, including my brothers and my sister, who tried bringing their goldfish out to their friends, which, don't ask, folks. Don't do that, by the way. Leave your fish alone. But as a whole, snakes are fantastic. I don't have a problem with snakes. They've never given me a hard time. They keep pests away. And because at that point I was still wrestling and everything else I was doing. So it was really the pet that I had the time for. It loved watching wrestling, and also Cole was a social snake. He loved people. And the other thing Cole did that no other snake I've ever seen do is Cole was affectionate. Cole would give what we called snake kisses. And I want to point out, before you guys are thinking, well, if it sticks its tongue out like a dog or a cat, that means it's tasting you. Well, yes, if he's sticking his tongue out, he is tasting me, but that's not what a snake kiss was. So Cole would do this thing where, again, people who are afraid of snakes are really bugging out right now. But Cole would be, obviously if I'm holding Cole is usually going all over the place. And what Cole would do is he would come up and give you a little peck on the lip or peck on the cheek or peck on the nose. He would look you right in the eye, and then he would come over and touch his lips to your skin. Not his tongue, but his lips. That was a snake kiss initially. And that's kind of what made Cole a very fun snake. He was cool. How many snakes actually give kisses? And he liked being held. He didn't mind people. My cousins, who are now older now, used to come over and hold him by his tail. And he didn't freak out like a lot of other animals would in that scenario. So he was really the snake you would bring to get people over their fear of snakes. He was relaxed. He was kind. He was patient. He was something that you could probably consider to be an emotional support animal if you're someone who did that. And also I can tell you this. There were times I had rough times, like October. I would bring Cole out, and I was less stressed because Cole would take away I would feel better holding Cole, and Cole would give the snake kisses and the hugs and the shoulder things, and it felt better. But that's about that. So I've almost been talking about snakes for an hour, so I apologize for those people who are afraid of snakes. So that being said, the moral of the story here is people give these animals a bad rap. Bats, my favorite animal of all time, probably get another bad rap, and that's again probably due to Hollywood and making you think of Dracula the first time you think of a bat. Well, fun fact, Dracula is based on not an actual bat. It's actually based on it's from a book, first and foremost, but then it's based upon a person from the way back in the day. Not even a bat is involved in that, per se. And the vampire bat, as people talk about, there is a vampire bat, but it's not like people make it out to be. Bats have many, many, many different things that they're good for. One, they do a good job controlling the pests, the insects, and everything else that people don't like. All those mosquitoes that people don't like to have, and moths, and all of the things that destroy crops and lives and carry diseases. Well, bats eat all of those things. A single bat eats anywhere between 2,000 and 3,000 bugs in a night. I want you to think of that next time you look at a bat and know that bat just ate 2,000 mosquitoes for itself, but he just took away 2,000 mosquitoes that can't bite you now. Look at it that way next time you think of a bat. Bats are my personal favorite animal because I think they're adorable, first of all. I think they're very helpful also. They're also the only flying mammal. Now, of course, you've heard of like a flying squirrel or whatever else, but those are more of a glider. They use their extra skin to kind of glide through the air. A bat is not that. A bat actually does fly. It's the only flying mammal. Its wings actually have the same consistency, that of hands, of a human. Why? Because, again, bats are mammals like humans. We are all mammals. We are basically in the same genre of the bat. So there's that. And the other thing they do is they do a great job with pollination. They spread, for those gardeners out there, they are the reason why your gardens can grow so well, because they pollinize the flowers when they need to, and they spread the seeds when they need to spread more fruits and whatever else. So there's very many different good things about bats that people want to think about. I go bat watching on a regular basis. Amazing animals. And I can also say I've never been attacked by a bat, just like I've never been attacked by a shark. I've never been attacked by a snake. in all honesty, I've never been bit by a spider. But these are things that people have scares from, or people are afraid of. A lot of it comes from lack of knowledge or education. So I just want to point those things out, and I want to recognize Elijah Richardson for his work on conservating, the environment and doing his part to help make the world a better place on his end to, clean up the environment, clean up the waterways, don't destroy the planet. Just leave the animals alone and be, whatever. Just live a better life and make the world a better place. Ants, take us away to our next segment. Alrighty then, ladies and gentlemen, here I am. I am back. I'm back again. Thank you, Ants. So this is a segment where I like to recognize some people, and I guess let's start with some accomplishments this weekend. We had some pretty big accomplishments this weekend. Some people we have talked about before. First and foremost, I want to congratulate the latest winner is. Rider Nation Lockwood has successfully gained a couple more medals to add to his trophy case, his wallet of fame, so to speak. Rider Lockwood is another young man who, a number of weeks ago, I gave a list of 14 people who I believe could be future UFC champions if they chose to be. Rider Lockwood was on that list, along with some other people who I had mentioned. Jake the Snake LeBlanc. I also suggested he would be up there, and the fact that they have embraced the fact that they are personalities, and also they know that they are that good. And I just mentioned Jake the Snake LeBlanc. Jake the Snake LeBlanc, who trains with the Adele boys, who we've talked about the Adeles on this show before. Troy the Terra Adele this weekend, by the way, speaking of Adeles, also had a dominating weekend. So congratulations to Troy, who he and Jake both did really well this weekend. Jake LeBlanc and the Adeles train together, and they do a great job together, and they show unity within their school and their dojo. Well, I used to still call it a dojo. I don't think they call where they train a dojo. I grew up calling where I trained a dojo, but their facility, their trainers are doing a great job with them over there because the Adeles, LeBlanc, they're beasts, all of them. So, and Ryder Lockwood puts in a lot of work. He's on the West Coast. LeBlanc and the Adeles are down out of Orlando in the Florida area, and they're crushing it over there. Let me tell you. But Ryder Lockwood over there on the West Coast, he's doing a great job over there. And Dmitry Tremkrov, remember I talked about him a couple weeks ago? And by the way, last week, Dmitry himself did really well in his own tournament as he earned a sword and some other things. And some cool things here is that Axton Jackson Baker, Ryder Lockwood, Dmitry Tremkrov are all going to be debuting this coming 2024 season on our Icons of the F4L as announced on our YouTube, for our YouTube show. Jake the Snake will not, but Jake the Snake is a beast. We recognize his ways. The Adeles, as you know, are coming back in 2014. They're monsters as well. Jaden Brooks, I want to say thank you to him for his anniversary wishes. Very polite and delightful young man he is. Igor Lanachev, who is a footballer out of across the way. Igor is one of our newer also people joining in 2014. He's a young football player, which we call soccer in the United States, but he is a delightful young man, always respectful, hard worker, knows teamwork, and he is going to be joining the 2024 roster as well. So we have quite a few people returning in 2024, and we had some people gone too, which is impressive too. And yes, folks, we are going to have more people added. We're not just, sticking with the people I announced. We do know quite a few of them. I'm not going to go over them right now, all of them, because, I only have so long. But we'd all recognize every single one of the people who are coming back. Both my son and I looked over our roster. And especially since tomorrow starts our new, and what we're going to be starting tomorrow is going to be groundbreaking. Starting tomorrow, we're going to give the fans what they've been asking for. They want more of our icons. So starting tomorrow, whenever wrestling is on television, we're going to be on YouTube. And then people can have their alternative wrestling. So Igor, Dimitri, Jackson, Ryder will all be part of our 2024 season, along with the Adeles, as always, and Jaden Brooks also. And also wanted to say thank you to Jack and Tim for the song we used for the promo for this. But also Jack and Tim in general, the music, Father Son singing group, they're going to be doing a tour, and their song Sunday at Church is still a great song. I have to kind of remind myself they're from Britain when they're singing these country music. They're crushing it. But Jack and Tim, good friends of the show, and they were touched by some words we had for them. But we always thank and appreciate them. And yes, Jack and Tim will be back in 2024, of course, because what would the Universal Division be without the Lucky Ones as their tag team? I mean, Brooks Brothers Incorporated, who is coming back, are going to need to keep up with that. And, of course, Ryder, Jackson Baker, Dimitri are all going to be part of the BA MMA division. Igor is going to be on the Universal division as well, along with the Jack and Tims and the Yesenia Verkovitz, and those guys are all going to be on that roster, and JoJo the Bodybuilder is over there as well. So, also returning 2024 with Jaden Brooks, as I mentioned. So, yeah, it's a lot of people, huh? Cool. Of course, Dane Cook as well will be on that roster coming back in 2024, because we need some comical people too. All right. Awesome. So I wanted to recognize those people on their accomplishments. All of them are crushing it, doing their own thing. We're honored to have our new recruits for next year. We can't wait to see what they're going to do, and especially since, remember, in June we're going to have our Open MMA tournament again, and some of these people were not here last year, and that'll be impressive to see how they do in our Open MMA Icon of MMA tournament we'll have in June. So congratulations to them, and also congratulations to Jake the Snake LeBlanc for crushing it as always, and the youngest of the Adeles, Troy, living up to the name. You guys are crushing it and killing it. Keep it up. All right, Ants, take us to our next. Coming up this coming weekend, I'm going to be away at Monster Mania 55. For those people who don't know, you probably should. But if you don't know, yes, this coming week, I will be in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. No, Cherry Hill, New Jersey. I will be in Hunt Valley, Maryland this coming weekend at the 54th Monster. Hold on, I want to make sure I got the right one. Got it, because we don't want to get the wrong one. But it'll be the last event to be held at the Hunt Valley Marymount Hotel in Hunt Valley, Maryland. It'll be the last show there at their longest area they've been in. Hold on one second. I'm going to give you the full details on this. And, of course, I myself will be there, along with all of my fellow Monster Maniac friends and extended family. This weekend at Hunt Valley, it'll be Monster Mania 56. Can you believe that? 56. And, of course, it kicks off on Friday the 13th. What a fitting place for a Monster Mania convention, or horror convention, to kick off on Friday the 13th. Any horror fans out there, you get it. So we're going to get into this horror stuff. Let me first go over your guest list for who is going to be joining me at Monster Mania in in Delta Motel Marriott at Monster Mania 56. Get ready for this, folks. Ready? First and foremost, my old pen pal, Elijah Wood. It's a small world, folks. We'll go over that some other point. But Elijah Wood will be here. Elijah Wood will be at Monster Mania this coming weekend, along with the Punisher himself, Thomas Jane, the musical phenom, and one of the best actors out there, Corey Feldman. Now, Corey Feldman, let me tell you about Corey Feldman right quick. I've said it before. He has helped a lot more than just his films and just the music industry. And I personally can't wait to get to thank Corey in person for what he has personally done for me. He showed me that there was hope for someone like myself to break out of a negative environment, and also that there is hope for people to continue to grow. Corey Feldman is living proof that as long as you stay true to yourself, keep going, you can still be okay. And he is the comeback king, and I get to tell him such at Oak this coming weekend, along with his other frog brother, Jameson Newlander. Also coming this weekend will be Alyssa Sutherland from the new Evil Dead Rises film series. Susie Bacon will be there as well from Smile and so forth. Randy Quaid, can't go wrong with good old Uncle Eddie or Cousin Eddie. Kerr Smith will be there for the first time ever. Also Elijah Wood's first time. Thomas Jane's first time. It should be awesome to have them there. The man behind the makeup of The Walking Dead, Greg Nicotero is going to be there. William Fletcher from Armageddon. Come on, his first Monster Mania time. Probably not his only. William Fletcher is probably the person who's been in probably a bunch of everything. You don't even know it yet. Good guy. Mark Boone, for those people who are Sons of Anarchy fans. Mark Boone Jr., Tommy Flanagan, and Kenny Johnson will be coming to Hunt Valley, Maryland this weekend, along with, you can't have Friday the 13th without Friday the 13th people. So, the great Derek Mears, who played Jason Voorhees in the 2014 remake? Well, the latest Friday the 13th remake, he was there, and been a bunch of other things as well as Derek Mears, Swamp Thing for those people like DC movies. Also, Kimberly Beck, who played Corey Feldman's older sister in Friday the 13th final chapter, along with the twins, Camilla and Carrie Moore will be there as well, also from final chapter and Friday the 13th. The great C.J. Graham, who's one of the nicest guys you'll ever see, who played one of the nastiest villains of all time. But C.J. Graham will be there in Hunt Valley, Maryland this weekend, along with the Warren Gillette, another Jason Voorhees, and of course, Ken Kilswinger, who was Jason and Freddy vs. Jason historically. Another really nice guy, by the way, I can tell you that. Also joining Monster Mania this weekend will be Lawrence Monison, will be there, along with Harry Manfieldy will also be there too. That should be fun. Of course, former WWE wrestler, Hall of Famer, and the current mayor of Knox County, Kane, will be making an appearance on Sunday only. And of course, Scott Jackson, the great man behind the art, and Buzz Husson will also be from, of course, that's from the Living Corpse comics there. They will all be taking part in Monster Mania and joining me this weekend. We can't wait, personally. We look forward to it. Thank you very much. So, it should be pretty awesome. Pretty awesome indeed. Hunt Valley, Maryland, this coming weekend, and yes, yours truly will be there as well, Because, I mean, come on. Why wouldn't I be? It's October. I got to go somewhere and whatnot. So, Hunt Valley, Maryland, Monster Mania. Go to monstermania.net for more information. We'll see you there for that. Ants, take us away. All right, folks, I saved this part for last. Talking about pro wrestling, talking about my career, talking about what I am about to do, or what I was thinking about doing, the rumors, innuendos, speculation. Should I, shouldn't I, why would I, where would I go? All right, let me be specific here. This was something I knew at some point. This is something I wanted to do since I was a younger person. Something that I have achieved. I've done this. My body says that I might be, at one point said that you might be too old for this because of all of the sports, the martial arts, the wrestling that I put myself through already. But guess what? Guess what, folks? Here's the thing. And again, unless you're someone who's actually competed in martial arts or someone who's actually felt what it's like to go on a mat or to go into a ring, to go on a stage, you really wouldn't be able to understand where I'm going to be coming from. But I'm going to tell you this. I had my last match. I worked in wrestling last in 2019. And I reflect upon all the people who helped me get to where I am. And I am thankful for everyone who I have encountered on my way. I am going to be very grateful because we're waiting to bring a friend of mine on this show here. Someone who I have a lot of respect for. From the wrestling world. Someone who I have known for a number of years. Someone who gave me an opportunity when I was just starting out. Someone who's always willing to give knowledge, opportunity to. Someone who has written a book. And we always support our friends. And I don't forget those who helped me get to where I am. If it wasn't for the training that I've had, if it wasn't for the people who took an opportunity on a chance on me way back in the day, I wouldn't be where I am. It's thanks to this. This is one of those people who was nice enough to give me an opportunity when no one else would. So, thank you to Sheldon Goldberg, who is going to be coming on this podcast. In the New England scene, he is one of the best names. He is a wrestling historian. There's not much about the wrestling world he doesn't know about. And I can't wait to have him on this show with me to talk to you guys about wrestling. Maybe let you guys know what got him into the wrestling world, but also talk about his new book that he's going to be coming out. And I got to tell you, as someone who writes, it's also, so awesome to see that I am not the only one in wrestling who can write and be creative outside of the wrestling ring. See, I think a lot of the problems that people have in the wrestling world is that they think that performing in the ring is all they can do in pro wrestling. They think that that's their career and that's it. If they can't go out there and perform, then they have no life in wrestling and they have no life outside of wrestling. I am someone who's been open to opportunities. Pro wrestling is something I've always wanted to do. I've done martial arts since I was younger. I competed in freestyle tournaments. Today that's called mixed martial arts. Can I go into the UFC right now at my age? I don't know about that one. But for the record, I was going to do a UFC exhibition fight once. And the person kept on ducking when they found out I was training and I was ready and I had the acronyms to do so. And that was an exhibition fight from someone who was from YouTube. I'm not going to mention names, but that Canadian person didn't end up taking that, kept on backing out of it, so it didn't happen. But there is something about the calling that you get whenever you see people do what you love. There's also inspiration from people who I see who are still doing this. When I think about the young athletes who I mentioned earlier who are doing the martial art thing, their goal, if they want to be UFC champion, they will. The people like the Ryder Lockwoods, the Dmitry Chimkrovs, the Igors, the Action Jacksons, all those kids, the Adele boys, all of those young men, they are natural fighters. They have drive, they have commitment, they have they have what you need to survive in fighting, in sports, and in life. People often, whenever they look at sports, combat sports, or sports in general, they don't realize the impact. And they don't know. Well, actually, it's from the outside, people don't realize what impact it has on you. I respect those who have the work ethic that I have. And when it comes to the names I mentioned in the last segment, where I gave the shout-outs to the Ryder Lockwoods, Dmitry Chimkov, Jake the Snake LeBlanc, the Adele boys, Action Jackson Baker, all of those legitimate future UFC champions, because they will be. Just like way back in the day when I was their age and I said, I'm going to be a wrestler. Whenever anyone would say, well, you're too short, you don't have enough money, you're too short, you're whatever the case may be, or you're too skinny was another one. You're too skinny, you're too short, you don't have enough money, you don't know anybody in pro wrestling. Guess what? What they didn't know is that I have drive like no one else. I have commitment like no one else. I have a work ethic that is untouched. I stopped wrestling in 2019 because, one, things were slowing down in wrestling, and also I wasn't sure, can I continue doing this? Can I continue to perform at the levels I once did? And then as I realized all that, recently I was looking at my own kids. They're older now. But I'm reminded of another wrestler recently who returned to wrestling because his kids never got to see him wrestle. His son, specifically, never got to see him wrestle. And I look at all of these amazing people I've known over the years. And I've decided that there's only going to be one person who's going to say, that's the end of you. You're not going to do this anymore. The only person who's going to do that is going to be me. Not my body, not my age, none of that. So, I realize there's so many people out there who have never actually seen me compete like I did. Sheldon Goldberg, when he comes on my show to talk about his book, which, by the way, for you guys who don't know, I mentioned Sheldon Goldberg does have a new book coming out. I'm going to tell you the name. It's called The Last Fall. And I am so happy that Sheldon is utilizing he's got a great intellect, very wise individual. Now, this book is not probably something you would expect him to write, but it goes to show you the depth that wrestlers can be smart. People have a misconception that pro wrestlers don't have enough knowledge, or we're not as smart, we're not as hardworking as everyone else. I got news for you. Before I was a pro wrestler, I did the martial arts for years, and only one draw on my record in martial arts. It haunts me to this day, that one draw. And again, unless you've actually competed, you wouldn't understand what that is. I got that draw when I was 10 years old. I started competing when I was 5. I had competitions up and down the East Coast. From 5 all the way till I was 18 years old. competing against some of the best schools out there on the East Coast. That's what we did back then. In freestyle tournaments, one of the best human chess players out there. I had the respect of the audience, the person across the mat from me, my sensei, my classmates. And when I entered pro wrestling, I didn't know anybody from pro wrestling. I was short compared to everyone else. I was never the giant that Hulk Hogan or one of those people are. But I had athleticism. I came from high school. I was a high school athlete. Soccer, which is football for the world audience, I played football. To the United States, I played soccer. 4 years of high school. Swim team, 4 years of high school. Wrestling, 4 years of high school. Throw in American football while I did soccer my sophomore year, which I never did again because that was idiotic. I've always been an athlete. I've always had the drive. I've always had the ability to do so. People who look at me today often laugh or sneer. You're not going to laugh too much when I'm going back to pro wrestling, however, because I am going to prove that there is still plenty of fight left in this old dog. There is many things that I need to teach this new breed of people in pro wrestling. When it comes to speaking on a microphone, or we call doing promos, there is no one that's going to touch me. People have asked me, well, Jazz, if you're going to be doing pro wrestling and you're going to be coming back, is Jazz Vengeance going to come back, the good guy, or are you going to bring back Jazz Fitness, the YouTube sensation? Now, here's the thing. You got to remember about the differences between the two. Jazz Vengeance was the voice of the people. He was always in shape. He was a fighter, much like everybody else. That was his gimmick. He was straightforward. If you come out there and you talk your smack, Jazz Vengeance is going to go out to the ring. If the fans say so, he's going to knock you on your tail, and then he's going to tell the referee to tell that guy to wake up, and when he gets up, tell him he just got jazzed by vengeance. The promo for Jazz Vengeance is, I am 6 feet tall, 215 pounds. I am the man, myth, and legend, Jazz Vengeance. Don't be afraid, be terrified. And that's a Jazz Vengeance thing. But when I contemplate, well, who's better? Who's more realistic? Who's more, who's more relevant? Fans. I don't know why it is, but the fans love Jazz Fitness. The bad guy, or heel in our wrestling world. Jazz Fitness was the one with the talk show, the fitness center. Jazz Fitness was the one with the Jazzy Jacks and the Jazz Ups and the barely being able to be athletic even though he was athletic. The character who I thought was a rib or a joke on me actually made me the YouTube sensation that I am. It introduced me to YouTube. Before that character, before I donned the moniker of Jazz Fitness, I had no idea what YouTube was. This is the early days of YouTube, folks. If you are currently I'm not so certain half the people who are on our roster were alive when I was started on YouTube. But that's okay. I'm doing math in my head. But in 2019, I stepped away from all that. And I thought, Jazz Fitness is such a jerk. Because his character was a goofy, sarcastic, comical, overbearing, narcissistic kind of guy. Who, he doesn't look very athletic. But he can shoot his mouth off better than most. He had the funny promos, and he had the skits, and the Eye of the Tiger video, which became iconic. The reason why he became the YouTube sensation is because the people called him the YouTube sensation. Why? because of all of his fitness videos, all of Jazz Fitness videos, yes, that's me talking in the third person, all of those videos, early days of Jazz Fitness put out by the company, became their biggest hit points. And even though at first I thought it was a rib, that the people were making fun of me for giving me this character, I owned that character. When I went to a ring, I performed, I committed, and I owned that crowd. Now, here's the thing, as odd as it sounds, using wrestling terms now, I was over as a heel. I got the heel heat that nobody else did. As much as I might have despised being a laughingstock to my knowledge, to be the guy to go out there and do this goofy stuff and be a jerk, kind of, but also get the just desserts and get the good guy looking good. That's the idea of a heel, by the way, is to make the good guys look better. That's the idea. Because everyone knows in storylines and in real life and anything else, good has to have a bad guy. That's just how it goes. So, ladies and gentlemen, in 2024, the YouTube sensation Jazz Fitness, for the first time in forever, will be returning, well, since 2019, to pro wrestling. But it's going to be a combination of both. Because rather than Jazz Vengeance who could fight, Jazz Fitness is going to not only be the guy who can run his mouth, but also back it up. Because the one thing that sets the characters in myself aside, I have confidence that not a lot of people do. It's a confidence that not a lot of people can bank on because I've been doing it for so long. I know every single person who stand across me. I can study a tape like no others. Now, a lot of people might say, well, why don't you go to the UFC then and show that you can actually fight like you used to? My job is to help the younger guys who are doing that now get there. It's their turn to take that ring. Let them have the UFC. Let them rise. I've been there. I've done that. I have paved that way for them to do that now. I will give them the tools, the knowledge, so that they can take over and achieve their own goals and dreams in that realm. I have kicked down that door so that they can do that. But also, to all those other kids out there, all those other people out there who dream, I want to do this, but it seems unobtainable. It seems like I can't do this. I was a short, skinny, poor kid from a no-name town and didn't know anybody in pro wrestling. I have rose to become a YouTube sensation. I have become the man, myth, and legend, Jazz Vengeance. And I have achieved the element of being the one with the bulging biceps, the perfect pecs, and the washboard abs. People will bow and worship the greatness that is Jazz Fitness. Again. When I'm going to be joined by Sheldon Goldberg, this is something I'm going to ask him about, and he knows a lot about pro wrestling. We're going to ask him if he knows of Jazz Fitness, what he thinks of a Jazz Fitness return or a Jazz Vengeance return. I'm going to leave it to the man who knows more about wrestling. Because here's the deal. As much as I know a lot about it, I've been in it a long time. I do seminars on how to speak in promos because I can do that. I am also man enough to admit that I still am learning something every single day. Because guess what, folks? From the time you start anything to the time you wrap it up, You're always learning something new. I have years of combat sports training. I have years of sports training in multiple sports. Think of how diverse those sports are. Soccer slash football, wrestling, American football, and swimming. That's in high school. But I also played volleyball. I also played softball. I also was on a bowling team. I've done all of these other types of sports. I've done boxing. I've done Muay Thai. I've done Kenpo, Judo, Muay Thai, as I said that already, and Chun Kudu. Boxing, American and pro wrestling. So I am more than ready. So, at the end of the day, the one thing that I look forward to the most, all of these people who I mentioned, I'm going to remind them that I was once them, and I am still proof that their hard work will pay off. And that even though I've already done what I set out to do, I'm going back to do it again. And I'm going to do it until the wheels fall off, as they say. So that one day my kids can sit front row, along with my wife, and those who have never seen me perform before, and say, we got jazzed by fitness. Because guess what, folks? Goals and dreams, no matter what it is, sports, film, music, doesn't matter what the dream is. It's obtainable if you're willing to work for it. Relationships is there if you're willing to work at it. I've been married for 5 years. We work as a team. We raised 2 kids who are successful in their own right. And still to this day, our kids continue to make the world a better place their own way. My wife, still to this day, continues to be the best version of her. Me? I am just getting started all over again. And continue to be me, who inspires others to do what I have done. And that is achieve. And that is become a dream master. One that not only talks it, not only dreams it, but actually puts the work in and gets it done. That is the difference. The people I mentioned, the Elijah Richardsons, the Ryder Lockwoods, the Jack and Tims, Dave from Monster Mania, Sheldon Goldberg, Axon Jackson Baker, Jaden Brooks, Dmitry Chenkov, Igor, Jake the Snake LeBlanc, the Adele Boys, Corey Feldman, all of those people. My wife, my kids, and everyone else who listens to this. Anyone else who I've touched in some way and I interact with to inspire them to be the best versions of them. Because guess what? It doesn't matter how small you are, how tall you are, what money you have, where you come from, where you live. It depends on your heart, your drive, and what you're willing to put into achieving that goal. Because guess what? I am living, breathing proof that you will achieve and you will get those things done. There is nothing that is not obtainable because I am proof. I have done it and I'm going to go do it again to show you all over again. Because I am Sean Jazz Stevens. I am the F4L icon, Sean Jazz Stevens. I started the F4L lifestyle because I didn't like how my blood was. I didn't like how I was raised. I didn't like how no one cared about anybody else. I said there's something out there for others. There's got to be a better solution to this. This can't be what I have to accept. I didn't accept it. I helped create the F4L lifestyle. And from the moment we started the F4L to this day, I live the F4L way. Love, care, compassion, understand and respect for each other's differences, and fight to uphold those things. in those core values. I am the voice of the voiceless. I have been the bully buster before it was a hip thing. Whatever you're doing right now, I've already done. And I'm going to do it again. I'm going to prove to you guys all. Your hard work and dedication is proof and commitment that it will work as long as you're willing to work for it. So, that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you become an icon. For those people who ever wondered, how does one become an icon? It's not easy. When you're seen as the leader of the F4L, you have a set of responsibilities to uphold by. It's not just a title. I didn't give myself Jazz, Vengeance as my name. I didn't give myself the title as a leader. The other members of the F4L, my brothers and my sisters worldwide, made me the leader of the F4L. Why? Because I'm the vocal one. I'm the one that'll say it when it needs to be said and not have any fear doing so. Because I back it up and I support it. I'm not afraid to stand up for anybody and say what needs to be said when it needs to be said. If it's saving the environment or saving some poor animal or speaking up against bullying or encouraging someone to get up off the mat when they fall or help someone up off a field who's fallen and feels like there's no hope, guess what? I am the one who reaches down and helps you up. Because that is what a friend does. That is what a leader does. He doesn't do it the easy way. He does it the right way. So, that being said, everyone, I am the F4L icon, Sean Jazz Stevens, along with my aunt saying, may all your dreams come true. Peace, everyone.